Welcome back, everyone. 8 years ago, I had traded in my 1998 Honda Helix that I had put 30,000 miles on in a span of around 4 years. I live in New England, so we only have a very short riding season. If it wasn't for that, I probably would have put 100,000 miles on it, but it wasn't in the cards. So I traded in my 98 Honda Helix for a 2007 Honda Silverwing. It's a 600cc scooter. The Helix was a 250 for comparison. The Silverwing was a beautiful machine, a fuel-injected, twin-cylinder motor scooter, and had a capability of around 100 miles per hour. But in the 1 week I owned it, I got it up to 94. And at that point, I had to slow down because, laws and all that. I didn't want to push it too hard. So, after about a week of ownership, I was struck, T-boned, actually, by an idiot in a Ford Escape. Fractured my leg. Put me in the hospital for a couple of days. I didn't really get my life back for about almost a year, really. I was in pain. I wasn't able to work for the first 7 weeks after that injury. There were no complications, but I didn't want to, push it too hard. But I really didn't. I would say it took me about a year to get my life back to the way it was. And I swore from that day forward I would never ride a motorbike again. Despite all the fun I had on that Helix and all the miles and smiles that I put on that thing. I became the Honda Helix guru. Those of my older subscribers, folks have been subscribing to my channel for more than a decade, would remember those days. I used to make how-to videos. I would talk about how to maintain a Helix, how to repair it, how to do all the regular maintenance, how to keep it going for the long haul, because I have friends who have put over 100,000 miles on a Honda Helix. And I intended to do the same with the Silverwing, kind of carry that tradition on with the Silverwing and, start with routine maintenance, repairs, little things here and there. That wasn't in the cards. I bought a Mazda Miata after the accident to kind of give myself something fun to enjoy, and but I said I'd never ride a bike again. But I'm over that now, and I'm ready to go. It's been 8 years, and we're back at it again. I said I'd never do this. I'd never buy another bike. Here we are. So, for new viewers of my channel, I want to say one thing. These are not short videos. These are not TikTok videos, okay? I make long-form videos that are very descriptive, very detailed, and in-depth. If you're not looking for that, go elsewhere. For the rest of you, I am going to, hopefully, and I'm being really optimistic here, I'd like to be the U.S. ambassador for the ADV160 owners. I want to detail and document every little thing about this bike. For those of you in the U.S. who are lucky enough to have found one of these for sale, thumbs up. Apparently, the ADV160s, now this is the first year for the 160cc ADV scooter. The PCX has had the same engine for, I think, 2 model years. But in the U.S., we typically get things late and crippled. Let me explain what I mean by that. First, let's kind of talk about what the ADV160 actually is. This is a one of two, I believe, one of 2 or 3 different ADV-themed Honda motor scooters. The ADV350 is not available in the US and probably never will be. It should be, but Honda hates the US, and that's what happens when you hate the US. I'm being a little bitter here, but bear with me. The ADV160 is really just an upgrade from the ADV150. It has slightly different styling, a different shaped windshield, different color options. This one here is the satin red finish. It's kind of a darker red than you're usually used to seeing on Honda Power Sports. It's a beautiful color. I kind of like it, but it is a little bit divisive. It features basically the same double cradle chassis as the PCX. In fact, I compared the two images side by side when I was looking at the microfilms, and it is literally this. It is a PCX chassis with maybe a few different mounting tabs located throughout the unit, and that is just for the different bodywork that the ADV has. A couple of different upgrades from the prior model year ADV is a slightly different instrument cluster. Now, this has the Honda keyless ignition, which is starting to become more common on Honda motorbikes. But let's just run down a few facts. So I'm not going to go over bore and stroke and everything, but the engine is a single-cylinder 160. It's 157 or so cubic centimeters, but they round it up to 160, just like they did with the Helix, which is only about 247 cc or so, which they advertised as a 250. But being classified as a 150 or above, it is freeway legal, and it will sustain, I'm told, somewhere around 65 miles per hour with a little bit of room to grow. Once it breaks in, for the first few thousand miles, probably not going to hit the top speed. It has to break in fully before it'll do that. The engine is identical to the PCX, the current model PCX. It is the ESP Plus motor. That means it is a 4-valve, fuel-injected, water-cooled motor with a VMATIC CVT, typical of all Honda scooters going back to the 1980s. I think their trademark is VMATIC, if I recall. I could be wrong on that. You got a 13-inch wheel in the back, a 14 in the front. These are basically general purpose tires. Now, Honda calls this an ADV scooter or adventure scooter. I don't know how much off-roading you're going to do with these tires. Sadly, there really aren't any good knobby tires available for this machine. So let's put it this way. If you live in an area with bad roads, this is not too bad. Anyway. A couple of different changes to the styling, like I said, from the ADV 150. This silver bit here, this is not metal. This is from the finest plastics Mother Nature can provide. It does seat 2 passengers. It has aluminum foot pegs and a pillion seat in the back. LED lighting all around for nice high visibility and hopefully long bulb life. It has the typical Honda scooter directionals. This, if you've ever looked, I'll get into it in a bit, but let's just focus on this for now. Being a modern scooter engine, it does have a catalytic converter. What's nice about the fuel injection on this bike is it is a feedback system. So I owned a 2007 Silverwing 600, and it had a closed loop fuel injection system. So there was no oxygen sensor, so no quality control, if you will. So what it will do is it'll use preset maps that determine how much fuel to deliver at a certain engine load. But what it didn't have is a feedback system, no O2 sensor. So it doesn't compensate for fuel injector wear or engine wear. It just kind of wings it. These newer bikes are, for emissions purposes, they are equipped with an oxygen sensor. So that tells you that, or what that really means is, it will constantly monitor the combustion quality and make adjustments as needed. That is good for long engine life, and it also saves the catalytic converter from damage. It's really a brilliant system. Some of you might be afraid of computer-controlled engines, but rest assured they've been around for 50 years, and they should be more reliable and require less maintenance than any carburetor ever made. This thing should go for decades before anything needs to be touched in the fuel delivery side. Okay, moving on from that, it is, like I said, water-cooled. That is good because it will, under heavy use, the water-cooled engines tend to survive a lot longer. They tend to live longer because they are more evenly cooled. And when you're at a dead stop, the fan inside of the, or on the side of the flywheel over here, is constantly pumping air through that radiator. There is a thermostat in there, which is surprising considering the size of the motor. It actually has a thermostat, probably the world's smallest thermostat, but it's got one. Over here is your coolant reservoir. You can actually see the coolant level right there. Little room for expansion. Nice. You can fill that bottle under the floorboard. The mat comes up, and there's a little door under there. Open the door, and there's a little cap. That's how you fill your reservoir. Over here is our ignition switch. This uses, it's currently unlocked, but this actually uses the remote key. When you press this, that ring lights up and it unlocks. I was going to save this for the how to use your ADV160 portion of the video, but I'm going to show you now. To prevent accidental activation of the ignition, you can shut this remote off. There's a button here. Press it down until it turns green. That turns the remote on. Press the ring or the switch, and look at that, it lights up. So you can unlock the fuel cap and the seat. While we have the fuel cap open, this is where your fuel goes, obviously. This cap just twists off a little over 1/4 of a turn, and it has a built-in cap storage compartment right there. I think that's genius. And there is your fuel tank. You'll notice there's a bar down inside that tank. That is not accidental. That is there on purpose. In fact, I was reading some reviews of the Honda Super Cub, which I'll talk about in a moment. And people were complaining that there was a support bar that gets in the way of the fill nozzle. That's there for a reason. That's to prevent you from overfilling the tank. When the gas comes up to that bar, so you put the nozzle up to that bar, okay, and that stops the nozzle. And then once the tank is full, stop. Do not continue. That's why it's there. But that's our fuel tank, fuel access door. Yes, everything's plastic. But you know what? That's okay. Plastic doesn't rust. And parts are readily available, and they're not terribly expensive. Moving on. So, under the seat, you have, like, I think it's 27 liters of storage. It's crazy. You can store a small full-face helmet in here, but not an XL size. You can fit most half-height or half helmets, or I think 3/4 helmets in here as well. Plenty of storage. This is one of the main driving factors of buying a scooter over a motorcycle, because you have that nice protected locking storage for your things. It actually even has a rubber gasket around it. So in inclement weather, if you're riding through driving rain, your stuff should be safe. Toolkit, not included. And we're going to go over this in a moment. This is a US spec machine. So it is devoid of three things. No toolkit, rear drum brake versus a rear disc in the world market. And the other thing it doesn't have is the auto start-stop feature. So when you pull up to a traffic light, the engine will stay running. That is a DOT thing in the US. Motorcycles aren't allowed to have that yet for some reason. Not sure why. I would be okay with it, honestly. But in the US market, that is not allowed. But this bike does have one vestige of that feature, and that is a stator motor, or an alternator motor. What I mean by that is when you start the engine, which I will start up in a moment for you, even in my house, when you start the motor up, it's a completely silent starter. So you don't hear the gear reduction of a starter motor because there isn't a starter motor. So it uses the alternator to start the engine. It's kind of cool. But that particular feature was added to the bikes for the ability to use a start-stop system without wearing out a starter motor. So that is a long life piece of equipment in there. You'll probably never have to worry about it. There's no starter motor to wear out, nothing to replace. That stator is a direct drive right to the flywheel. Kind of cool. Really quiet. Kind of unnerving, I guess. This toolkit, by the way. So in the US market, they don't include the toolkit on the ADV160. But if you go on Honda's parts website, well, one of the many parts dealers, or even the selling dealer where you buy the machine, you can actually see in the parts explosion, it shows the toolkit and all the various part numbers. And you can order them. And you can have the toolkit. What does it come with? I thought you'd never ask. Let's take a look. Okay, you get this. This is actually probably the only thing worth buying. This is your spark plug wrench, as far as I know. This is your 14 and 10 combi wrench, an 8mm flat wrench, and a dual bit screwdriver. This is a flathead and a Phillips head, number 2 Phillips. And you get a bag. Okay, so here is the receipt for the toolkit. If we pause, you can see those part numbers. You can order them yourself from your local dealer, or just ask them. They'll be able to look it up for you. Cost for me was $27.94. So why buy the useless factory toolkit? Just because. Just because you can. But this right here, that's going to make it worthwhile. None of these tools will allow you to do a roadside oil change. I checked. Kind of shocked about that. It's like there's one wrench missing, but that's it. Those are the only tools that you get. So, okay. This bag is 71 cents. So, just throwing that out there. While we have the seat open, let's take a look at where the battery goes, in case you ever need to replace it. There's your factory lead acid battery. I have mine hooked up to a tender. Actually, the dealer put the tender pigtail on before they put it on the floor, so that was already there. But it's held in by the usual Honda rubber strap. Your fuse box and relay box is right here. Let's pull the cover off that real fast. We'll take a look at what's in there. So you've got all your fuses and 2 relays. I'll go over what they are. So your fuses for your fuel injection and ignition, fuel pump, I think. Your turn indicators, meter, horn, this is a 5 ampere. Relays aren't labeled as to what they're for, but I assume one of them might be ABS. Oh, we'll talk about that too. Let's see. This one says, I can't read it. Something, it looks like it's in Thai. I don't know. Oh, license and taillight. Sub 1, sub 2, headlight, ABS battery. FI was probably fuel injection. Your main 30 amp fuse. USB has a 5 amp fuse. We'll talk about that too. Backup, don't know, an ABS main. And then you've got your spare fuses here. 15, 10, 5, and a 30, and a fuse puller. Pretty well equipped. I mean, right? It's like they thought of everything. So we'll put this back on. Okay. Now this guy here, this looks like an accessory plug for something. Maybe a diagnostic port. I don't know. There's another one right here. I'm not sure what they're for. I will be ordering the service manual to kind of learn about those little tips and tricks and things, and maybe it covers what all that is all about. Okay. I'm not sure if this has an OBD port anywhere. I'm going to look into that too. So the seat has a built-in mechanism to prevent it from crashing down. And you can gently lower it, lock it down. So what differentiates the ADV from the PCX, other than styling, the ADV does give you a tad more ground clearance. I'm told around 1/2 inch. The suspension has more travel. I'm not really sure what the numbers are. I forgot to look it up before I started shooting the video. So a little more suspension travel. Slightly different body styling. I prefer this, by the way, over the PCX, hands down. But basically the same engine, same drivetrain, entirely same drivetrain. Same basic options, analog brakes, and this has traction control. So let's talk about that for a sec. So there are, this particular model, being a US model, does not have dual channel ABS. I think the European Asian one does, but this only has single channel for the front disc brake. In fact, there's your tone ring for the ABS sensor. Sensor's right there, and you've got your dual piston caliper right there. So the traction control uses the same sensors as the ABS. Of course, in the back here, you've got your vehicle speed sensor. This sensor, which is mounted to the rear final drive, also gives out, or also sends out the speedometer reading. So this is where that's coming from. From what I understand, in non-ABS earlier versions of this engine, this did not exist. In fact, they used to have a dipstick tube right there for the final drive oil. You really don't need a dipstick for that. You just, every oil change, just drain it and fill it up using these bolts here. There's your fill bolt, and your drains, I believe, right down here. Just change it every time you change your oil. You'll never have to worry about it. It uses only a few ounces of motor oil. Not a big deal. I know we talked about the rear storage under the seat, but there's also a small glove compartment up front, and that's accessed through this door. This is one of the criticisms I have, other than the American version having only a rear drum brake. I would rather have rear disc, but America always gets screwed when it comes to small displacement bikes, because why not? Yes, I'm bitter. So this compartment, you have to push this in, and it releases. I think that's kind of chintzy, and that's my only real criticism so far. I'm sure I'll have more. But this is where you can store your phone, and you've also got a USB port right here. This is a USB-A port. I believe in earlier versions of this bike, there was a standard cigarette lighter type plug in here, but actually glad they moved to a USB port, because it just makes things a lot simpler. You don't have to carry a converter. Just throw in a USB cable for whatever phone you have. I have an iPhone. So that just makes my life a lot easier. I'm going to come up with a way to route the cable up into the to the handlebars. There is no good way to do that as it sits, because this closes pretty tightly and I don't want to wear anything out. This little tab right here is probably going to break. This is, again, my only real criticism on this bike is this stupid tab. This looks like it's going to snap. And to replace it, you have to replace this upper cover. They could have done better, but, you know, they didn't. This compartment is also gasketed for to reduce weather intrusion. I like that. Another differentiating aspect between the ADV and the PCX is the windshield. So the PCX has a little visor thing, but it doesn't really do much. The ADV has a 2-position windshield with a vent. So I just pull these little knobs out and raise it up, and that will create the necessary wind deflection to hopefully move some of the air around the rider. But it does have this little vent here. I'm not sure that's necessary, but it's got it. Overall, the quality of this hardware seems to be pretty decent. I mean, it's like a fiber reinforced plastic. It's pretty good quality, pretty thick. They actually used a real windshield material. This is panelite, which is used for for motorcycle windshields and other high impact plastic, so it can take a hit, as it's designed to. From Tijan panelite. Yeah, I looked into it, and yeah, that's what it is. It's a high impact material. It's designed to protect you, actually. These are going to break off in even the slightest crash. But, I mean, they usually do anyway, so, you know, why fuss over it? Now, this is where I know more about this bike than the salesman who sold it to me did. Because, number one, he's trying to start the engine with the kickstand down. Can't do that. There's a switch in there. It's to prevent you from starting it with the kickstand down. Okay? So that's one of the first things. I'm like, hey, he's trying to get the thing started, and it's like, it won't turn. I'm like, put the kickstand up, you idiot. But anyway, nice guy. Really nice guy. I can't complain. Just didn't know a lot about the scooters because they don't sell a lot of these. So let's go over some of the controls. Well, I want to do that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the ignition on, unlock it, turn it on. You can hear the fuel pump and the ABS pump doing their things. So this is what happens. When the engine is running, the ABS light stays on until you get moving. Because this vehicle has traction control, it turns on automatically whenever the ignition is turned on, but you can turn it off, and I'll show you how. But for starters, let's get into basic setup, clock settings. So you hold these two buttons down like that. 12 hour, 24, 12, then hit the forward button to do the next. That's 8:13. That is the current time. This right here, if I'm correct, oh, this is your brightness control. Okay, so this is an adjustable brightness. So in no brightness at all, look at how visible that is. So I meant there's no lights on now. I've got lights behind me, just fluorescent lights, LED lights, and that is completely visible in the direct sunlight. This is an improvement over the ADV160. Leave it on full brightness. Next option, miles per hour, Fahrenheit, and then you're done. Now, this joystick up and down, this actually allows me to move to different, this is your multifunction indicator right here. So I can change the voltage display to outdoor temperature, which is 56 degrees, which is actually correct. My wall thermometer is reading 58, so close enough. You can move down. This is your average fuel mileage, and this is your elapsed time, I believe. You have two of those for various trips. This is your, as far as I know, this is your on the fly, this CONS, that's on the fly mile per gallon reading, fuel consumption. Okay, and there's your odometer. Could also be one of two tripometers. So this has 0.2 miles on it and 0 miles on the odometer. So it's brand new. This HSTC, that is Honda something traction control or stability traction control or some form of that. You can turn it off. Now what it does is if you're cruising along and your rear wheel starts to spins faster than the front wheel, well, that's going to trigger your traction control. And what it's going to do is it's going to lower your engine output. It's going to actually cut your throttle for you. And that's designed to keep the bike from losing control. You can turn it off. All you have to do is hold this button down, left or right, and then this light comes on. There's your traction control. Disable, enable. It will turn back on again when you shut the ignition off and turn it back on. That's basically it. And then you got your fuel gauge. There is an oil change reminder right here. It's set to the first 600 miles, and then after that, it's every 4,000. I do not recommend going 4,000 miles between oil changes. I have owned 4 Honda scooters, and the oil is typically blacker than the ace of spades after the first 1,000 miles. I would change, if this were mine, which it is, I intend to change the oil about every 2,000 or less. I'm thinking I used to do 1,000 miles on my Helix. I think this engine is more tight and much more, modern oils and being what they are. I will do every 2,000 miles, but I will not go over that. Even with modern synthetics. And the reason for that is this engine does not have an oil filter. No oil filter. You don't need it. You really don't. It does have a mesh, or not a mesh, but it has a screen filter. So any particles, that end up in the oil, they will go into the screen. But don't do the 4,000 mile oil change if you want your bike to last. Just don't do it. 2,000 miles, 1,000 miles, but not 4. Anyway, so that's that. There's your tachometer here, and of course your mileage here, and a clock. And let's do an ignition cycle. Let's take a look at all the warning lights. So you've got overtemp, engine or ECU, or fuel injection malfunction, ABS, and you've got your high beam, directionals, left and right. And that's that. Pretty much all the information you'd ever need to know. There is no oil pressure indicator. There is no oil level indicator. So keep an eye on your oil level, especially on a new bike. Hand controls, horn, and your 4-way. This actually has 4-way flashers. I wish my Helix had this because it would have been very handy. That one time I seized my engine on the side of the highway at 77 miles an hour, and I was stuck there for about 3 hours. It would have been nice to have 4 ways. By the way, that engine had 30,000 miles on it when that occurred, and it happened because my oil plug fell out. And I had a buddy of mine actually come to my rescue with a quart of oil and a new plug, and that engine lasted another 10,000 miles after that, and I sold it for $1,000 fully running. Did no internal engine repair. You can't kill a Honda. You can't kill these things. Seized it up at full throttle on the highway, and it survived. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. Okay, starting up the engine. Kickstand has to be up. Ignition on. And there you go. There's your tach. Pretty easy. You didn't hear the starter, did you? Because there isn't one. Very quiet, very clean running too. You can barely smell any exhaust at all. How do they do it? I get a lot of complaints about the uselessness of these mirrors, and I can see why. Well, number one, they're not adjusted properly. You have to kick them out a little bit. But I would say they're no better or worse of a design than what I'm used to using. But they need to be adjusted to be, more usable. So this is all the way in. That's all the way out. Yeah, they just need to be. So there's a jam nut in here. You have to just loosen it up and move the mirror. I don't know. We'll find that. I'll find more about that when I get this thing on the road for the first time. So we'll learn more about it and maybe make some adjustments as needed. The handlebars are held on by this clamp, and they should be fully adjustable. Well, you can adjust the angle of these if you want to. And you've got adjustable angle adjustments on the left and right brake. Rear brake, again, this is a US model, so it's cable operated, like a caveman. Here's your parking brake. There we go. Self releases. Pull the handle back, and there you go. There's your parking brake. That's obviously useful if you put it on the center stand. You can see, you just saw it just turned itself off, so it must have a built-in battery saver feature of some kind. We'll just switch the ignition off. Let's take a look at the, so it has a, so let's do a little role playing here. My keys are dead, battery's dead, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and there's like a life safety kit in here, and I need a shot of the snake venom stuff, and I'm gonna die, and I can't get my seat unlocked because, oh my god, the keys are dead, and or the vehicle battery is dead. Either one of those scenarios would be valid. What do? I can't get in the seat, and I can't use my phone because my phone's locked in here too, because why not? Well, that's where this little tool comes in handy. So this you want to keep on your key ring for cases where you're stuck in the woods and your anaphylactic kit is in the seat and you can't get it open because your key's dead or your battery's dead. Here's how you get the seat open. Here's how you get open the seat. No, wait, what? No. Here we go. This comes off. Now, if you've had an earlier model Honda scooter, you might recognize this little setup because it's similar to the setup that they were using to lock the key opening, where you would use the back side of the key to unlock it and twist it open. Well, this is the same technology. There's a magnet in here, and it's designed to fit this little cap here. There's a little bump out on there that lines up with that bump over there, and pull down on it and it unlocks your seat just like that. Okay, you can't do it with a screwdriver because there's a magnet in there. So that's how this works. So this magnet interfaces with that with the back side of this little lock here. Pretty neat. It's not high security, but I mean, you're not really storing Fabergé eggs in here anyway, I hope. If you are, well, okay. But that's how you get to the battery in case it dies and you can't unlock the ignition with the key. Is that locked? This may need some adjustment. Ugh. Oh, maybe it's still unlocked. Hold on. Let me make sure that it's fully retracted. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I think it, I don't think it fully retracted on its own. Put this back on. There we go. Oh, I heard it now. It's locked. But that's your emergency key, or I'm sorry, your emergency underseat access right there. So I do recommend putting one of these on the key ring that you're going to use, just because, or hide it somewhere on the bike. That's also an option too. The bike came with these. I don't know what they're for. Do you? Because I don't. It's a collar. Whatever. Let's talk a little bit about these shocks. So one of the key features of the ADV are these Showa piggyback shocks. Now, I am dying to know if these are real reservoirs. I think they're fake. Fake reservoir shocks do exist. They are a thing. And they're popular on inexpensive bikes, especially bikes coming out of China. These, I don't know. I don't know if they're real or not. These are not adjustable. I thought I'd point that out. There's no provision for adjusting on these shocks at all. So they are what they are. But these, are they fake? Are they real? Who knows? I hope somebody can confirm one way or the other for me by either drilling into this or cutting it off with a hacksaw or a sawzall. I'm almost tempted because my curiosity is stronger than my sensibility, and I almost want to buy one of these used because I can find them. I can get them used from an older model bike, and I want to get one and actually do the test. Is it real? Is it fake? Tell me. Somebody tell me. Let's do a more detailed overlook here. So here's our air filter housing, held on by 47 screws. There's your belt case. This all looks to be pretty easy to service. I did watch a couple of videos in Thai, because that's where these are from, Thailand, and that's where they're popular. No, they don't make them in Japan. Honda's moved a lot of their smaller bike production to Thailand. It's just more cost effective, and this is Thailand, and the surrounding countries is where they're mostly sold. So it only makes sense. The quality of this bike should be every bit as good as a Japanese-built one. I have no doubts about that. It's pretty well put together. But here's your air filter drain. So if you see oil in here, that indicates that oil has made its way into the air box, and that's not a good thing. But this is your water drain. This is a one-way valve. So if water gets in there, it should drain right out. Let's see. Just like a typical Honda scooter engine. You can't really see much of the business end of the engine, but this cover comes off to give you access to the spark plug. Valve adjustments are required on these engines about every 4,000 miles. For the first like 8 to 16,000 miles, I would do them. After that, they should be fine. But you've got to take the seat tub out. It's a lot of work. This is not going to be fun to service. There's your kickstand. Drain plug right there for the oil. And there is your filter screen. One of the things that I've learned as I've worked on a couple of these engines, you want to take that filter off every oil change. It should be clean. It should have nothing in it. But if you start seeing little bits of black plastic, take note of that. That could be your timing chain guides wearing out. This does have a hydraulic timing chain tensioner, which is kind of high tech for a scooter engine, but that's what it has. So hydraulic timing chain tensioner, but you have to adjust the valves. That's going to be a process because it's so hard to get to them. You kind of have to take the world apart. But underneath, you've got unscratched, unscathed panels. See how long that goes. Let's see on the other side. I stated this earlier, but this is a catalyst exhaust system with a under here you've got your oxygen sensor. You can probably see it. There she is. There's your O2 sensor. To change the rear wheel, you have to disconnect the O2 sensor and unbolt the exhaust and then the swing arm. This is a scooter. That is one of the only things I don't like about scooters is to do the wheel or tire change. You've got to take the world apart. Oh, it kind of sucks, but that's just how it is. There's your radiator fill cap. Radiator's right there. Let's see. There's some light here. Let's take a look inside there. This is a brand new bike with 0 miles on it. Let's get a look at all of the unrusty welds. There's no rust anywhere yet. But you can see the throttle body straight ahead. There's your fuel injection, your throttle body. Yeah. There's a resonator here. On the intake, a Helmholtz resonator. That's what they call that. Helmholtz? I forget the name. What that does is it's supposed to keep a certain amount of vacuum, I think, between intake pulses or something like that. It's to smoothen out the flow of the intake air is what that does. Helmholtz. That's it. I guess this has to come off too when you do your tire change. Let's see. Let's get underneath this thing. There's your beautiful radiator without any bent fins. I bet you that's a heater core for like a Honda Fit or something. Look at the engine case. All beautiful and shiny. No leaks. Let's get a look underneath here. So there's your, you're going to have to unbolt all that. There should be a disconnect. I see it. Yep, for the O2 sensor. The exhaust is painted on this. Not sure I like that. I would prefer a stainless exhaust, but at this price point, I'll take what I can get. Look up there. There's your water pump. That black plastic thing right there, that's where the... take my glasses off so I can get under here. That's going to be where your thermostat is. Look how shiny and new everything is. It's not going to be like that for long. That's for damn sure. If I look over here, I can just about make out the evap canister, the evaporative emissions, and I see what I think is a purge valve way over there. I think so. A lot of plastic on these bikes, on these new ones. A lot of plastic everywhere. Here's the frame. That clear, or that pink tube. So one of those is a drain for the battery compartment, and the other one is for the evaporative system, your air intake for the evap. Let's see. There's our coil right there. Ignition coils right there. Let me see here. There's our spark plug. You can get that cover off. Let's see if I can push it off from the back without breaking clips. I don't think so. They don't make it easy. You got to pry it off once or twice for it to come off easy. Belly pan. It's already got drips from being outside when it was transported here. Those are fake vents. Rear peg. Exhaust port is bigger than it was on my Helix. Impressive. But yeah, there's a catalytic converter in there. So if you're a meth head, these are easy to get. All right. Tire brand, the factory tires. I don't know the brand. I'm not familiar with it. I think it was, let's see if we can get it. So they're Thai, so made in Thailand. It's a 130/70 13-inch MC for motorcycle, tubeless. The brand is, oh, it's an IRC. Okay, I've heard of those. It's an IRC, Trail Winner. There's your muffler bearing. No, literally, that's what these are called. That's, so on a scooter, if you're new to the scooter idea, these bearings are good for like probably 30,000 miles. And once they wear out, you just put new ones in. It's easy enough. So this supports the side swing arm here, which is also the muffler mount. In the community, they're called muffler bearings. It's a real thing. Because this side, the gearbox is all oil lubricated. But this bearing is just oiled or lubricated by grease, so it wears out. I changed mine on my Helix probably at around 25,000 miles, and it was still pretty good, actually. Brand new. Got a little bit of play, as it should. Not bad. This is what it sounds like new, in case you're wondering. In case you're seeing this video 10 years from now and you're not sure if that's a normal sound, this bike's got 0 miles on it. Here is your rear brake adjuster and the wear indicator. If Honda follows their normal protocol here, there should be a wear indicator here. If it passes a certain point, it's no good. There it is. So there's your wear indicator, like a what would you call that? Like a needle. And this little dent here, this little impression. So if you pull this in it, and this lines up with this, your rear shoes are bad. So that'll cost you a whopping $13, I think, for shoes. They're not expensive. But there are guidelines in the owner's manual for adjusting the rear brake. Just take a look at that and keep an eye on it. Let's mosey on to the front here. There's our triple tree. There's a little bit of surface rust up here. You know what? I'm not shocked. That's usually pretty common. There's our little meat horn. Let's see if we can see anything cool under here. All right. So let me see if I can get my head up in here. Let's see. Might not be a bad idea to spray some fluid film all around the frame just to keep it from getting surface rust. I mean, they're gonna do that, you know. There's a main. Oh, there's your ECU right there. There's your main ECU connector. It's kind of in an odd spot. I wouldn't think they'd put it there. Is there something missing, like a deflector or something here? I don't think so, but I'm gonna look into it. It looks like there's something missing, like a cover. I don't know. I do wonder though. I'll have to look into that. for sure. And 0 miles. Maybe not. But you'd think there'd be more protection for that ECU harness connector. Yeah, maybe, kind of. Well, I mean, this is what $5,600 gets you in 2024. We already talked about this, but there's your ABS tone ring and your sensor right there. So keep an eye on those when you're changing your brakes. It's got Sunstar, a Sunstar sawtooth brake rotor, and a typical 2-piston Nissan caliper. It looks like the same caliper on every other Honda that I've ever owned. So pretty similar. ABS. LED headlamps. That's a nice feature for sure. Although I don't see the bulb. I'll have to turn it on to see where the bulb is. Oh, it's way up in there, and then it kind of reflects down. Are these Stanley, or are they something else? They are... Can't really see the make. Top E13. I don't see the Stanley brand on here. 100. Oh, here we go. There's the brand. Let's see. They are... Get the light on there just right. I can just barely make it out. The lighting was made by Koito, and the directionals are made by Mitsuba, both very reputable Japanese manufacturers. Although one thing that I can see that might break on this is this little joystick. I think Honda could have done better with this, for sure. I think that this could have been improved. But the nice thing is this part right here probably costs like $30, and it's replaceable independently of everything else. So I think they knew that when they designed it. They made that provision. Look, guys, there's not a lot else I can say about this motorbike. I haven't even ridden it yet, but I am anxious to do so. And when I do, I will keep you all posted. My likes, my dislikes, what I think. But I'm going to probably use this on a lot of shorter trips. And once I'm more comfortable with it, I'll take it on some longer adventures. My hope is that someday I'll be able to work myself up to doing a 3,000-mile cannonball, or gumball, whatever they call them. I think it's a cannonball, or no, gumball. There's a scooter rally that they do. There's an East Coast and a West Coast. I'd like to do the East Coast. Maybe do all of Route 1, all the way into Florida, something like that. I like to go on a nice little adventure, on 2 wheels. I think I owe myself that. And this is the perfect machine for it. It's got plenty of storage. Before I close out the video, there are some aftermarket accessories you can add. There is a pannier mount. There is a Honda does not actually offer a trunk mount for this, and I can see why. It would block the taillight. But there is an aftermarket trunk mount if you are so inclined. They do make them. And you can put a top box on it if you want to. I'm not going to do any of that. There's plenty of storage in the seat and in the glove box. I don't need anything more. But this is it. This is my thorough review, not review, but my thorough introduction to the American market ADV160. I hope some of you find this video useful, but I know I'm going to get a lot of complaints, and that's okay. It is what it is. Until then, guys, enjoy. Mystery solved. These go right in here for the plate mount. That's all they are. Now I know. I'm not going to be using those plastic plate mount screws that the dealer installed. I'm going to use like something a little more substantial. But yeah, that's what they're for. Now I know. So this is a matte finish or satin finish paint. Do not wax this. Just don't. It will ruin the finish. I think just soap and water. That's it. No wax, no fancy anything. Just soap and water to clean this. And you can hose it down. It's a motorcycle. It can get wet. It's, you know, it's not the Wicked Witch of the West. It can get wet. It won't melt. But soap and water and nothing else. No wax. No spray on wax. Nothing. No silicone. As for the plastics, I'm going to use, let's see, which of these surfaces are painted? Okay, this is painted. Okay, so same deal, soap and water. This is molded in color, I believe. This is painted. So painted is good because it means it won't fade and turn chalky like a Chinese motorcycle. So anything painted is okay. Some of these covers are molded in color, so maybe a little bit of 303 protectant on this stuff, but apply it to a rag and wipe it down. But this is painted. This looks like it's painted. I'm seeing speckles in that finish. This is not painted. This is molded in color. That's molded in color. That's molded in color. So just to protect it from UV exposure, that Formula 303 stuff works pretty well. Even gasketed the indicators. That's pretty cool. But I'm liking what I see in painted surfaces because, like I said, on cheaper scooters, this would all be unpainted, and give it about 2 years, and it's going to turn all zebra striped and chalky. It looked pretty bad. This does not look painted, which is okay because this is where your feet go. And if they had painted this, it would get all scratched up pretty quickly. So this looks like it's all molded in color. And that's okay. Doesn't bother me. I know how to protect it, so I'm not too concerned. But I think that's all I got for you guys now. And as we move forward with my ownership of this bike, assuming I don't get killed my first week out, because that could happen. But assuming I don't get killed, we'll definitely be able to do a lot of videos on this. How to tear it down, how to maintain it. I shouldn't have to do any repairs, just maintenance, which is why I bought new. So I love that. It's a nice windshield. I think it looks good. The earlier model windshield, I think it looked kind of awkward. I think this one looks a little nicer than the earlier one. The earlier one was, I think, a little narrower and kind of useless. So they took some of that criticism and they made it a little wider, changed the shape of it. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, I wish you all the best. And if you have any advice for me, if you own one of these in the U.S. or not, and you have any advice, I'm all ears. This is not painted. That's not painted. You can just tell. So some of these plastics will probably start to fade and discolor in a couple years, but just keep it parked inside. Keep a cover on it, and it won't. You know, it'll last a long time, and it'll look pretty good, too. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy. All right, guys, let's talk numbers. What did all of this technology cost me? The MSRP is $4,500 in the U.S. market, $4,500 US dollars. That is not what you're going to pay, unfortunately. And I checked with a couple of other local dealers, and they were not in a bargaining mood. I ended up paying $5,600 out the door. That includes delivery to my house, which they charged me $75 for. I know, right? And I live just a few miles from the dealer, but I had no other way of getting it home. $5,600. So most of that is, so 45 to, yeah, so just about $1,000 over MSRP. And there were markups, there was overcharge, there was, yeah, I paid too much. But I couldn't find a better deal. So, you know, you got me. You know, what am I supposed to do? I wanted this model, and I also know that these sell very quickly in this market. And as we approach spring and summer, these will sell. And I wanted the one in the color that I wanted it in. So, I mean, I did what I did. But again, try finding one cheaper. I couldn't. So, it's just one of those catch-22s. If you want it, you'll pay it. If you don't want it, don't pay it. They even offered to give me my deposit back. I had already given them a deposit on a Super Cub 125, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go for the ADV because it's a much more substantial machine than the Super Cub. And when we talked about the final price, I said, "Oh my God, you're screwing me." And he's like, "Well, you can have your deposit back." Okay, I'll play. Anyway, I don't want to get into too much of that, but I looked online. Some folks have paid as high as $7,000 for one of these. No joke. So we don't have state sales tax in New Hampshire, so I didn't have to pay any of that. So I think I got off easy. Okay, now the inevitable. Yes, you can go on Amazon.com and you can buy a 150cc scooter for $1,000, but delivered and everything with tax and title, whatever, you're looking at closer to about $1,300 to $1,400 for one of those. One reason I would caution people against buying one is based on personal experience. My father owned a Honda Jackal clone. It was a Chinese bike. I don't recall who the make was. It was like Jialing, I think. And it had a GY6 clone engine. It was almost a perfect identicant of a Honda Jackal, which is a classic, kind of retro-looking motorbike scooter. And I'll tell you all the things that were wrong with it by the time it had 1,000 miles. It had 2 bent rims. It had dissolved oil seals in the engine. The main one that I did replace for him was the valve cover gasket. It had turned to gum. It was gone. The brakes were warped. It had booger welds all over the frame, like somebody welded it sitting on the ground with using their feet as vices. Seriously, this thing was shitty. The plastics. So anywhere where there was a screw that had to go through to mount plastic to plastic, all of those are stripping out. The instrument cluster was totally inaccurate. The fuel gauge, I don't think the fuel gauge ever worked. The lights were dim. It was just, it was what it was. It was like a $1,000, $2,000 bike when it was new, somewhere in there. And my dad bought it for $500, just as something to kick around in. And he actually, I rode it, he rode it, we had fun. It was a fun little bike, but it was not well made. It was what it was. You get what you pay for. So, I would, look, buy what you want. I recommend going Japanese or Italian. The Hondas, Suzukis, Yamahas, they all produce small displacement motorbikes, and they're really not too far off from what I paid for this. But Piaggio has a pretty good bargain. The Liberty 50 and the 150 are kind of a bargain. I think they're less than $3,000 MSRP. I don't recall what country they're built in, but they're built to Piaggio standards, which are pretty high. They also make Vespas. They use, I believe, their leader engine, L-E-A-D-R, which is a good solid motor. I think it's a 4-valve fuel-injected single, 150 or 50, depending on what you go for. And they are great commuter bikes, and they are within striking distance of what you would pay for a piece of shit from China. I'm just going to say it. The Chinese bikes are garbage. They are what they are. A lot of them are actually built initially for the Chinese domestic market because it's all they can afford. And they're built to those low standards. There's no quality control. There's no parts availability for those. Except for basic engine parts because they use a Honda clone motor on those. So you can get your gaskets. You could probably get a complete rebuild kit actually pretty cheaply. But once again, everything that engine is attached to, Two key areas that I find the Chinese typically struggle with on their cheaper bikes. Plastic quality. The plastics that they use are just not fit for the job. They're basically using the same plastic that they use on kids' toys at Walmart. Not a very good material, does not hold up to UV. The paint that they use does not hold up at all. So within 2 years, it's going to look like hell. Going back to plastics, the lenses and the windshields on the Chinese bikes tend to turn yellow very quickly, and then after that, they begin to crystallize and crumble. Same with the instrument cluster faceplates. They're not good. The quality just isn't there. But they can be fun, and they can be cheap. Just understand what you're getting yourself into when you go Chinese. You're not going to pay a lot, but when it comes time to buying parts, when it comes time to finding certain bespoke components like fuel tanks and bodywork, forget about it. You're just not going to be able to find those parts when you need to. I can say, and I can vouch for Honda, which is why I've been very loyal to Honda, is when it comes to finding components, any kind of part, anything that I need for this bike, they should be available for years to come. I've owned two older model, a 150 Elite, 1986, and a 98 Helix. And neither of those bikes I ever had a problem getting parts for. No matter what it is, I can get it. I was never even a concern. So, that's one thing that can be said for the Japanese motorbikes. Even a 1981 Suzuki FZ50 moped that I restored, I got all my parts directly from a Suzuki dealer, and that bike was pushing 35 years old. Not an issue. So that should be a consideration if you're looking to buy a motorbike. The other thing is when you buy Honda, you know that the brakes meet DOT standards. You know that it meets emission standards and it wasn't cheated. The Chinese have been caught cheating emissions on these bikes, and they've actually started revoking registrations. I know I read that somewhere on some of the earlier Chinese motor scooters. Yeah, you can have your registration revoked if it turns out that the emissions records are falsified. I think Wildfire Scooters got caught doing that. I think it was that company particularly. But you got to be careful.